Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's 1 million by 1 million online rendezvous. This is Sramana, Mitra, founder and CEO of 1M by 1M, coming to you live from Silicon Valley, California. Happy New Year. Let us hope this year is going to be a much better year for most of humanity than it has been last year. We are seeing good signs of progress, and I will spend some time today discussing some of that and its relation to our world of entrepreneurship and technology startups and so forth. First, though, let me set some context for those of you who are joining us for the first time. 1 million by 1 million is the first and only global virtual accelerator for technology startups in the world. Our mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs reach $1 million and beyond in annual revenue. And in support of that mission, we do all kinds of different programming. This series of online rendezvous is one of them. We do this on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we also have online mentoring roundtables that happen on Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. Pacific time over a WebEx call. And if you want feedback from me on your particular project, startup project, and we only work in tech, by the way, tech and tech-enabled services only. In that domain, if you want to work with me and if you want feedback from me on your project or you want to discuss what you're doing, the way to do that would be to go to our website, 1mby1m.com, and then go to the free public roundtables section on the top navigation bar. And you will find there our full roster of upcoming sessions, and you can register there. Okay, so that's the context setting. Now, normally in these sessions, I deal with question and answers. And today I thought the best way to start the session would be to answer a question that is on many minds. And that question is, what is your assessment of the trajectory of the pandemic in 2021? And this is important because we're all trying to make decisions on various aspects of our businesses and journeys. So this is a helpful thing to start with. So I would say the big silver lining now is that humanity has a number of promising vaccines. There's Moderna, there's Pfizer in the US, there is the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine that is starting to get approval around the world. It has already got approval in the UK. China has a couple of vaccines. Sinopharm is kind of showing good results, I believe. Russia has a vaccine, but I saw very shady reporting on that, which made me a little bit concerned. India has a homegrown vaccine. But the most interesting thing is that India is going to be ready with like 50 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which they are manufacturing at scale. Let's review a couple of great stories of entrepreneurship in this context. Moderna and Serum Institute of India are two great entrepreneurship stories. Moderna has brought to market an mRNA vaccine at warp speed. Nothing like this has been done before. This is an amazing entrepreneurial journey. They've been around for a while. They've been working on this mRNA platform for a while. And then in a way, their moment came with COVID. And it looks like they're seeing 90% success with their vaccine. That's on the vaccine science end, which is extremely inspiring. No less inspiring is the story of Serum Institute of India, which did a dramatic expansion of their manufacturing facilities. They used to manufacture vaccines before, but in faced with COVID, they invested about $300 million of their company's money and another $350 million from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to increase their manufacturing capacity from 1.5 billion to 2.5 billion doses a year. And last April, long before they knew whether or when a vaccine would be forthcoming, they agreed to produce 1 billion doses of whatever the Oxford University AstraZeneca research team eventually would come up with. And this gamble has paid off. Serum Institute will likely supply COVID-19 vaccines to half the world population, 7.5 billion people, by 2022. And that is tremendously exciting. Humanity has struggled, humanity has suffered, but humanity has also, in more than one way, stepped up to the plate, right? So the other, aspects in which humanity has stepped up to the plate in a tremendous way is in our industry. Amazon and many other e-commerce companies have kept the world fed and supplied. All the shopping, a very large portion of the shopping has happened online. I was talking to an Indian VC before the holidays, and he was raving about how the online pharmacy business in India has ramped up. So e-commerce has really been a lifesaver in this situation. Zoom and other collaboration platforms have been incredible. Online learning technologies and services have been incredible. So, whether it's e-commerce, collaboration, communication, online learning, online entertainment, Netflix, Amazon, Prime, Disney, all these streaming companies have kept us entertained, right? We have binge watched incredible shows like Queen's Gambit and so on. And, it's when you're stuck at home, you need entertainment and you need to keep your mental health in order. And all these techniques of connecting and consuming content have been helpful. So what I find amazing is that humanity has shown resilience at the face of a once in a century challenge. It's been really tough for a very large portion of the world. It's been really tough, and they're still struggling. Retail workers have struggled, hospitality workers, airline workers. These people have had it really, really hard, and lots of people have lost their jobs. Lots of people have lost their livelihoods. People are facing eviction crises and so on. So it's very, very hard. It's still very, very hard. And it's still going to take a lot of work and a lot of philanthropy to come out of this. And on that note, I want to acknowledge two great philanthropists' works. Of course, one is Bill Gates, who has done amazing work in vaccines. And I just told you how he has financed to the tune of $350 million Serum Institute's efforts. And part of the game plan that Bill Gates has formulated with Serum Institute is he is financing the vaccination of a lot of the developing countries, or a lot of the poor countries' vaccination efforts, whether it's Africa or India and many other developing countries will need philanthropy to be able to vaccinate, and he is providing a lot of that. And he has funded a lot of the research as well. Another new entrant to the philanthropy scene is McKinsey Scott, who is the former wife of Jeff Bezos. In 5 months, in 2020, she has distributed $6 billion of her wealth, and including, she has financed a lot of food banks. The hunger is a real issue that humanity is facing right now. And McKinsey Scott has funded a lot of food banks and a lot of efforts at helping in this crisis. So, it's a nice thing to do to begin the year by looking at the positives. We have a lot of challenges, a lot of negatives, but we have a few positives to look at. The last thing I would say is not about technology or entrepreneurship, but about politics. It is actually kind of heartening that America has, in a legitimate electoral process, been able to boot out Donald Trump and all the related toxicity that we have been dealing with for the last 5 years. It's not completely done. We still have the Georgia elections happening today, and that's causing a lot of gyrations. And then we have to also go through a smooth transition, so on and so forth. And it is a very divided country. America is a very divided country, but at least we are one step further in the direction of dealing with this acute dysfunction in our politics. Okay, so I will take the next question, which is, what are the timeline implications for startups? So the vaccine timeline is as follows. By the summer, things should improve with large chunks of the populations in various parts of the world vaccinated. And this should be in all countries. By the end of this year and early 2022, there should be an immense improvement. Half of humanity will get vaccinated, and that will tremendously help in, curbing transmission and so on. So I think we are going to be on a recovery path this year. The psychology of the world is going to be positive. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. So people will have, a more positive way of looking at things. So, of course, you as startups would need to decide, or we as startups would need to decide strategy based on what we've been doing in 2020. If you're in the market for fundraising and you have already validated your businesses in 2020, fundraising starting now is okay. I think investors will look at companies to fund, but do understand that there is a massive pipeline. Fundraising did slow down last year because the primary goal that investors were working with is to support their existing portfolio companies, and new investments did stall. But if so you're going to face more competition is the bottom line. But I think it would be okay to try to raise funds at this point. Now, if you're not yet validated, and if you're just starting out, I saw, I'm going to discuss this in a moment, but I saw numbers that there's been an enormous number of new entrepreneurs who have registered their businesses in 2020. People were at home, especially in our industry, in the tech industry. People were at home and they had time in their hands. So they started noodling with startups of their own and doing something of their own. For this category, I am assuming, I haven't seen any research, I haven't seen any statistics, I just know how this industry operates. So my assumption is a large chunk of these, new entrepreneurs are showing intent, but have not necessarily quit their jobs yet. So I think bootstrapping with a paycheck for a while still, maybe the first half of the year or even 9 months, is perfectly fine and in fact recommended. And fundraising thereafter, depending on the status of your validation. These are the, few highlights of strategy that I'm providing as an overview. I'll be happy to answer questions on this stuff if you want to use the public chat areas to ask questions on any of your strategic elements as you shepherd this still rather tricky time, because the pandemic in America is rising. India has managed to get things under control quite a bit. The UK is still bad, but the UK has started administering vaccines at a pretty good clip. So soon things are going to get better. Europe is still struggling, but I think it should start to get better as the vaccine starts to spread. So maybe another 2-3 months of strife, and then things start to get better. So as you're navigating through this and planning, let's we can discuss more of the issues that you're facing. So the next question I'm going to address is entrepreneurship declining or rising against the backdrop of COVID? Interestingly, I actually read articles saying both. There have been articles that say that entrepreneurship is declining. There have been articles that say entrepreneurship is rising. So, there is too much information out there these days, and it's not easy to filter through that information. So I choose to, control the sources that I trust. The Economist is one of my trusted sources. So there is a very interesting article from last fall in The Economist that says the number of new businesses in America is booming. So I'll read you a bit of this article and then we can discuss accordingly. The pandemic has had all sorts of unexpected consequences, from a boom in sourdough bread baking to more people listening to nostalgia music on Spotify. Less noticed is a once-in-a-generation surge in startups. The government regularly releases figures on new business formation derived from applications for tax registrations and high-propensity business applications, those displaying characteristics typically associated with firm creation and the employment of staff, recently reached their highest quarterly level on record. And there's a chart that accompanies this commentary that shows in the United States, firm foundations move up in 2020 from about 300,000 to close to 500,000. And that's a huge jump, because the numbers from, actually in about 2005, 2006, 2005, 2006, the number was in the 400,000 range, and then it dropped down, and then in the time like 2007 till 2019, it has hovered between about 300 to 350,000, and that number in 2020 went up from about 300,000 to close to 500,000. So it is a significant jump. How much of that registration actually follows through to building firms and employment and so forth remains to be seen. But at least the first step has been taken. People have shown intent that they want to start a company. Now, there is a caveat to this. Some of these may represent people trying to claim stimulus funds and a backlog of unprocessed applications that probably built up in March and April. Nonetheless, they reflect a genuine rise in American entrepreneurship based on a different survey. Goldman Sachs finds the share of respondents starting new business in the past 3 months has also risen sharply. Other evidence shows that about as many Americans now work for themselves as before the pandemic, even as overall joblessness remains high. This is not a surprise entirely, because the joblessness, the mass scale joblessness that has happened in industries like airlines and hospitality. At the same time, Amazon, for instance, has hired like crazy. And some of those industries and the logistics sector have hired, e-commerce has hired, warehouse workers have been hired extensively. So that there has been a balance, and on the like restaurants have closed down, that's been a negative, but the technology industry has been a positive. So it seems like there is a lot of balance. And why do we see a lot of Americans working for themselves being the same number as before the pandemic? Does that mean that the startups, people who were running these small businesses manage to survive with stimulus money, that probably is the most likely explanation. And then it has been further, the ones that have gone out of business have also been compensated. That number has been compensated with the new startups that have started. Anyway, so the other interesting data here is 90% of the net rise in the number of sole traders. What sole traders meaning, I guess, solo entrepreneurs, being driven by people with a gross household income of less than 35,000. A group that was especially likely to lose their jobs when the pandemic struck, and who would have seen a particularly large income boost from the stimulus measures. America's new crop of entrepreneurs is moving away from dying sectors and towards up-and-coming ones. In most industries, the number of sole traders is in decline, yet in the past year, the number working in the information sector, comprising jobs such as data processing, web search portals, and publishing, has risen by 50%. So this is something we should take note of. Solo entrepreneurs in the technology sector has gone up tremendously. So that's something that I should double click down on a bit, because I think in people who listen to these sessions, there are a lot of solo entrepreneurs. So the next question I'm going to address is, what is your recommendation for solo entrepreneurs? Their numbers seem to have risen. I'm going to point you to a set of resources. Number one is the 1 million by 1 million bootstrapping course. If you go to 1mby1m.com and then go to the blog, we have pinned our bootstrapping course to the top. So you can access it very easily. There is a lot of demand for this course at the moment, especially because a lot of these solo entrepreneurs do not have background in entrepreneurship. You're very welcome to go through this, and many other related resources are pointed out in there. In the course, I've dealt with bootstrapping with a paycheck extensively, and I strongly recommend that if you're a solo entrepreneur just starting out, do consider bootstrapping with a paycheck, because for the time being, resources are going to still be limited and constrained. So without validating, do not let go of your paycheck if you have one. If you've lost your job and started a company, that's a different scenario. But if you have a job and started a company on the side, I would say bootstrapping with a paycheck is seriously to be considered. The other thing, keep in mind, is the notion of the virtual company. We run a virtual company. We have a lot of virtual companies in our portfolio and have had over the last 10 years. We've done case study after case study of virtual companies. Virtual companies work. There are an enormous number of resources out there to build virtual companies, and you can hire from low-cost geographies and so on, and it's incredibly effective. So I would strongly recommend that you, instead of hiring a lot of people in an expensive geography, definitely consider virtual companies. And also, the other thing to consider within the virtual company context is flexibility. Hire people for projects on a flexible basis, and don't get into very large overhead situations out of the gate. Those kinds of situations, those kinds of liabilities very quickly burn up your cash reserves and put you out of business. Running out of cash is the number one reason why companies go out of business. And if you're very early and if you're a solo entrepreneur, wait to raise money. Solo entrepreneurs have a difficult time raising money unless you have a business that is validated and is scaling. If that's the case, then you can raise money. If not, if you're earlier on, then solo entrepreneurs are not the preferred style of companies that investors like to invest. We are big believers in solo entrepreneurs. We have no problems with solo entrepreneurs. We have no problems with virtual companies. We have no problems with bootstrapping with a paycheck. We have no problems with bootstrapping of any kind. So all that is fine. But there are, you have to kind of navigate your journey through these turbulent waters with a reasonable, realistic point of view in mind. Last question, how can entrepreneurs work with you? Well, go to 1mby1m.com, go to the free public roundtable section on top of the navigation bar on the left, and register to come to one of our free public roundtables, and I will be happy to dialogue with you and brainstorm with you about your strategy, give you my input, and work with you. Those are safe working sessions, and anyone who's working on a tech or tech-enabled services business is welcome. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming. Do check out the bootstrapping course, and do check out the other resources on the 1mby1m.com website. Bye-bye.